So next we are going to see how we can harness the power of Langgraph and how it is different from Langchain. Unlike the linear workflow where we define the tools and tell the agent where to start and where to go next, everything is manual. As a developer, we need to connect all the dots. It will be like very linear, and even if we put some conditions, it becomes the architectural complexity. That's why if we migrate to Langgraph, the agent communicates with different kind of tools, but here we also have the nodes. Node acts as an intermediate layer between the agent, tool, and another tool. Each node will process whatever task it needs to do. Once it is done, then it has the control of branching it out entirely new node or to the next node, which we configure in the code. We are going to see how we can harness the power of Langgraph with a Langgraph AI application. So we'll be walking through a Langgraph workflow application. This application is same as what we did previously, a Langchain workflow. But how we execute is a bit different compared to the Langchain workflow. Let's see the internal blocks of the Langgraph workflow application. Initialize the workflow bot. This basically needs an extra imports from the Langgraph. So we imported Langgraph. Even here I got the research output. Brief me about AI. Here as well we are following the same pattern. Even Langgraph has the set of tools and each tool needs a language model. So here we follow the same pattern of having 3 different models to execute each tool. Again we have the chains. So every tool will be having a chain. The initial setup will be almost same like whatever we did in the Langchain. On top of that, the extra step what makes it different to the Langchain comes here is the building graph. So this is where we build the graph for this workflow. You can imagine like we have a various tasks to execute, and we map each task with what to be executed next. Can actually relate it with a flow chart where we have if else conditions. Where success happens, we need to execute a different task. If it not, we need to reiterate the previous task. That kind of configurations can be done while building the graph. This is the graph that we are building here. Router node, research node, validation node, publish node, and moderation node. One thing I would like to add here is the moderator node, which validates. It's like a fact checker. Even the content is validated. This moderator node evaluates the score, how relevant the content is matching with the user's query. That's the key job of this moderator node, which we have in place for the Langgraph application. This have a moderator chain, and it pass the current state and pass the input. This chain is just like any other chain that we created in the Langchain workflow, the same applicable here, but it is all that what we give in the prompt. So I'm instructing this chain, evaluate this topic with this content and return the result in the JSON format by evaluating all these parameters from the content and the overall score. For me, to make it easier, I am considering only the overall score. If we want to experiment with other values, we can. It's based on our use case, so I just have them in place, but I'm using only the overall score. The moderation receive this information as part of the input argument. First we are getting the current state by using the router. As we set here research, the same value will be right here as a current state. As a next step, we are invoking the moderator with the content whatever we received for the current state. Because the current state is a research, we already set the value in the state. We get that value from the state, assign it as a content, and we take the topic from the state's input. So the state's input is actually the initial query of the user. As soon as the chatbot has run right, invoking the agent by giving the input as a parameter. This input is also a state parameter in the workflow state. That's how we get the topic value from the state and we pass it to the moderator. So now the result, it returns with the score. Initially I am returning it false to make the execution smoother. We can simply, if score is less than 7, then retry the operation. It restarts from the research again. Now let's get back to building the graph. Here I have a router now, research node, writer node, validate node, publish node, and each node is a wrapper over the chain so that it takes the input from the router node and it pass the information to the chain, and once it gets back the chain's output, then again the node will take the control, perform whatever is mentioned in the graphs. Then we set the entry points, and this is how we add the edges to each node. So this represents as soon as the research node is done, then it passes to the moderation node. The simplest way of doing it without moderation is, I'm just typing it for an example. We can give it like, as soon as the research is done, we can go validate, and as soon as the validation is done, we can go for the writer, and the writer is done, we can do publish. So this is without moderator, a linear graph, same as Langchain workflow. This is ideal way of doing the previous application in the Langgraph. But now we have the moderation in place in each step. Earlier we don't have any validator, whatever research provided, just the LLM which refined the research content and it gave it to the validator. But we don't have what is the fact level and what is the accuracy. That's why I thought of adding a moderation node which will be apt to demonstrate the Langgraph use case for this workflow. Here we have every node pointing to the moderation node. In the execution of each and every task, the control goes to the moderation. That's what we are configuring in the graph. Once the moderation job is done, then it will hand over the task to the router. That's what we are mapping here. So let's see what this add conditional edges. This is graph way of handling the if else conditions, success, failures. Without this, if we need to get this feature execution, we need to have a lot of if else conditions which will complicate our execution process and code maintenance. That's why Langchain has evolved their architecture, got the Langgraph in place. Here I have a router. Everything comes to router. Router is the conditional edge. So the state is workflow state. So Langgraph is having an additional advantage is like it maintains the state of the application. Unlike Langchain, we can maintain the state, but we need to maintain explicit flags, logic and everything in Langchain. But Langgraph came with the inbuilt architectural flexibility that we can maintain the state within the graph object itself. So we will be having a workflow state with all the tasks, executions or various parameters, whatever we need to execute this application defined here. While building the graph, initialize with this workflow state so that the graph will be aware what are all the different states present in this workflow. Whenever we execute the router, we set the current task name in the router. Based on that, whatever is mapping to that task name, if it is research, it will take the research node, execute the research node. If it is write, executes the write node. Because we have given the same names for the workflow states and the node names, we are simply mapping with the same. So as soon as the router finishes, it identifies what is the current task, then it takes that node and executes. Once the execution of the node is done, example if it is research, it executes the research node. Once the research node execution is done, then it comes to the edge of research and it executes the moderation. Once the moderation task is done, then it goes to the router. That's how the workflow execution goes on. So this is a router node. I'm explicitly validating if it is a retry, then do the research. If the score is very low, then the research need to be started again. If the workflow reached the right node completion, then it can publish. Now we have seen how the graph is configured, how the nodes are getting configured, how the edges are configured, how the graph takes the conditional routing, what are the basic advantages of the graph we have seen till now. Let's run and see how the Langgraph works. And the one best part is we can also visualize how we actually build the workflow by using this simple command get graph and draw mermaid. So it draw the entire flow structure as an output. Let's run the application now. Application started running. This is our Langgraph structure. So we have a router, research, write, validate, publish and moderation as a nodes. Moderation goes to router always. Research goes to moderation. Router to publish. These are like a conditional based. That's what it represents here. Validate goes to the moderation, write goes to the moderation, and publish is the end of the graph. Once we start getting familiarized with the graphs, we can easily understand the complete workflow of the application by looking at this graph. Let me ask brief me AI. So as we have hard-coded the research result, the node is immediately moved to the next node, moderation phase. So let's see each and every phase, how they actually goes through it. Research moderation is done. The moderation score is 8, so it is pass. So it will goes to the next node, which is validation node. The validate node as well passed by the moderation. Next will be the write node. As usual, writer node is taking too much time. Finally, we got output from the writer. So the agent replied, revolutionizing enterprise productivity with AI document summarization. So that's what Brief Me AI is about. Seems like it has articulated what it did previously with previous Langchain workflow application. This is basically what we can execute using a Langgraph application. This is just a simple example that we built using the Langgraph. We can ask ChatGPT or Gemini to suggest various examples or dynamic workflows where Langgraph is pretty much useful to build the applications. The key highlights are Langgraph doesn't hold memory, and the advantage is the heavy lifting part of conditional routing is taken care by the Langgraph itself. That is the key and very important point that we can remember, which differentiates between the Langchain workflow and the Langgraph workflow. Apart from that, Langgraph also supports a state management where we can easily track current state of graph, and we can easily branch out from a single node to any node based on the validation checks by using the conditional routing. So that is the major learning for me while building this Langgraph workflow application. So now we know the entire difference between just a simple language model plus Python code AI application, Langchain based application, and Langgraph based application. Hope the demos what we have covered so far as part of my learning journey made you also understand what building an AI application using all these features. We started building agents with the basic tools which are available in the market like Langchain and Langgraph. We do have further enhanced versions of the similar kind of tools in the market where a lot of companies already adopted those tools to build the various AI based applications like Llama Index, Haystack, Flows AI, Crew AI. I mean, a lot of other tools are available. Once we are familiar with these basics, we can go and explore any kind of tool which is available in the market. I don't think it will be any different to the tools or examples what we have worked using Langchain or Langgraph. The concept would be similar. They would be having advanced enhanced packages available within their tools to build the AI applications. And hope you guys really enjoyed this journey of AI learning along with me. All the source code link is shared in each and every episode's description. Explore the repository, very simple examples that will make you understand. All you need to have is enthusiasm and curiosity to explore the code. That's what I have, which made me to stand here in this AI journey. From knowing nothing to build agents along with the AI assistants available in the market like ChatGPT or Copilot. I have learned everything from them. There were too many to and fro questions. Why we need to do this? What is the need of this parameter? On top of that, there was a lot of experimentation before I brought these demonstrations to this podcast series. And that's all I have in this episode to say from my side. If you do have any comments or suggestions, please do share in the comment section of this video. I will be coming up with another interesting topic in the next episode. Till then, stay tuned and thank you for watching.